Hello, everyone, and welcome to a brand new episode of Crooked Illness. As you can see from the title of today's episode, What's Breaking Taboo All About? We are going to be diving into two meanings behind this. We are, of course, going to be getting into ways to break the taboo surrounding mental health, along with the nonprofit organization called Breaking Taboo, founded by today's guest. Joining me today is Serena Sun, the founder and director of Breaking Taboo, a nonprofit organization dedicated to mental health awareness and suicide prevention education. I'm so excited to have Serena here today to share her story and chat with me about this incredible organization, the work done so far, and future plans to continue breaking the taboo. So without further ado, welcome Serena to the podcast.
Hi, thank you so much for having me, Paris. It's so
Yes.
nice to be a part of this.
I know, of course. I was so excited when I connected with you on Instagram. I don't know how it happened, but it happened. And we're making this a reality. And we had a conversation prior to this that was so good. I was like, yes, we need to turn this into an episode. So I'm so excited to dive into your story today and breaking taboo and what it's all about. So I would love if you could share your story with us about what inspired you to create your organization, Breaking Taboo.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. So what inspired me? I have a background in psychology and film, and I used to give seminars about suicide prevention across campuses, high school, middle school, and college campuses across the LA County. So I was already very well versed in the world of suicide prevention. Um, but what really spawned it, I would say, is because I lost multiple friends to suicide. So the very last person to trigger, I guess, get the ball rolling on Breaking Taboo, unfortunately, that I lost was a very good friend of mine that jumped from a 3-story parking lot structure. And, I was definitely dealing with survivor's guilt. I was depressed for a period of time myself after that. And I remember just one day I was sitting on my couch and I was just thinking, why does this keep happening? Because I remember every time I would give one of these seminars, students and teachers alike would always come up to me and just say, this student's going through this. Can you talk to them? Our school just experienced a suicide, last week or last month, and this is a huge issue for us. One of our teachers just died by suicide recently. We don't know what to do. All these students need your help. They're all, these teenagers are just lost. They're all going through things. They don't have anyone to talk to. And it was just overwhelmingly apparent that there was a drastic need for this type of education. So I had already known that. And then to lose friends on top of that, it just constantly reminded me of this need. So I remember after the loss of this friend, I was sitting on my couch one day and I was just thinking, like, why does this keep happening? And I had a light bulb moment and I realized, it's not necessarily that we don't know what to do about it. It's not necessarily that we don't have education about mental health. I mean, I graduated with a degree in psychology. There's a whole field to do with mental health, but it's just that there's such a taboo around this topic. People don't talk about it the way that they talk about physical health. They don't walk around talking about their last therapist visit like the way that they might talk about their last physical checkup, for whatever reason.
Yes.
So the taboo is what prevents people from the access to the education and the ability to get help. And in, unfortunately, the cases of my friends and people that we all have lost to suicide, I do believe that a big part of that is because a lot of them just didn't reach out for help, didn't know how to reach out for help. We're ashamed of what they were going through. We're ashamed of these things that I just call, human feelings, whether it's clinical depression or not. It's like we do feel sad, it happens, but there's just such a shame and guilt and like a wrongness surrounding it that just, creates this taboo and people get stuck in it. And then what happens is they spiral, they don't get help, and the worst case scenario is we lose lives because of it. So that's when I set out creating the documentary that we are
Yes,
still
the
working on.
documentary is so cool because I remember, like looking into the work that you were doing, and especially, bringing up that point you just did right there about taboo and about, of course, there's education out there regarding mental health, but the taboo and the stigma surrounding that is what holds people back, like you said, from feeling like they can talk about this or get help or discuss it. Because if you really do sit here and kind of compare different situations to physical health, right? Like talking about having a cold or, having some kind of, surgery that you're going to be getting soon with, different body parts. It seems so much easier to engage in that conversation, start that conversation than it is to say, hey, I was diagnosed with this, or I'm really struggling with these kind of feelings and I don't know what to do about it or how to communicate it or express it. And I think that's so awesome that you did the work you did before going in and speaking to schools and different things like that, and really, getting the word out there about the taboo, because, of course it's something you can't see and it's invisible, but the fact that it ultimately can lead to losing people, losing lives because of whatever it is that was holding that person in that place and keeping them there, I think is
Right.
so important and so incredible. And I
Right.
also love the name too of the organization, Breaking Taboo,
Thank you.
because it's so simple, but it's so to the point and true of,
Thank you.
relating to a lot of the issues surrounding, different struggles with mental health in general. So yeah, I mean, I'd love to hear more about the documentary. So tell us about that.
Well, the documentary is still being worked on. We've had to halt production because of COVID. So we were actually supposed to be wrapping it up during COVID, but of course, then COVID happened. So it's halted right now. However, we are still working on it. It still has to go through post, and the documentary actually came before the actual nonprofit. The nonprofit came as a result of the movement that the documentary created, that kind of just like took a life on its own, and we got such an overwhelming response that I realized, oh my gosh, in order to really make a difference in this, in order for this to really um, create change in society, it has to be a actual nonprofit. So the documentary, our intention for it is for people to have access to this type of education and life-saving tools while learning how to open up conversations and break the taboo around mental health, whether it's their own health or the health of others around them, through the comfort of their own homes. So we would like to make it available on streaming platforms so that this, again, the point is to make this education accessible to everyone, not just people that have access to therapy or people that are psychology majors. And we also intend to have this documentary shown to as many public school systems as possible, starting in the US. So we're already creating a lot of mental health programs in school systems, and this documentary is just going to be an additional part of that. So yeah, so again, the intention is accessible mental health education. And in the documentary, there are a ton of people that are involved, everyone from educators to therapists to holistic healers to people from the other side who go through or have gone through mental health issues of their own, as well as people that have lost close ones to them. And and you get to see mental health in a variety of different angles,
Wow.
which is
Wow,
kind
that's
of,
so cool. I love
yeah,
it.
thank you. Yeah, and it kind of explains the way that I approach everything that I do. So around how to break this taboo is even on our website. We share stories from both therapists and people who go through mental health conditions of their own. Same thing with the podcast that I host. It's the same thing. So I believe that in order to break the taboo, there's multiple angles to it. You can't just concentrate on like one aspect of it because it runs really deep. This taboo
Yes. And I
is
love
everywhere.
I love the accessibility piece you bring up of the documentary, having that available to provide that education to people who aren't so involved already with mental health and already, that's what they do for a living and their work, and they're already so surrounded by it. But just everyday people who might want to learn more. Maybe they want to learn more about just mental health in general. What do these struggles look like? Because maybe, they
Right.
might have someone in their life, or maybe it's them who's struggling and just wants to, see what it's like from different perspectives. Like, I love how you bring up, having different people on, like educators, people who have struggled, all kinds of different people who are part of it and speaking on this, and just having it, on different streaming platforms, and, through doing that, and then having the nonprofit, and then doing the podcast, and doing, all these different things, and kind of reaching different areas and different fields that people are interested in, right? Because, there's some people who love podcasts, some people who love watching things, some people who love,
Mm.
going to places and, hearing people speak like you and different things like that. So I think that's awesome that, having the documentary, and I think that's so cool too, how you bring up how the organization actually started as a result of the documentary, and just the outpouring of reactions you've gotten from people who've been involved with it and who've seen the work that you're doing. And I just think that's so awesome that you decided to continue to work towards making it a reality and really turning it into what it is now. And I just think it's really cool and really
Thank
awesome.
you.
And I know, like, last time we were talking a little bit, we chatted about the taboo surrounding mental health in your culture and family. So I wanted to
Mhm.
ask you, have you noticed a difference with this since starting Breaking Taboo? And if you have, what has changed about just the taboo around it within your culture and family?
Yeah. Well, so since I've started this, which was just a few years back, I even within the span of 5 years, which I guess is half a decade, I have noticed subtle changes that have created larger changes through time. But whether it's a result of breaking taboo directly with my culture or not, is that I feel like it's a result of a lot of different efforts like breaking taboo coming together and trying to educate the world on these topics. But I have heard in speaking with my family about this, that my culture, the Asian culture, is getting slightly better about being more open about topics of mental health. So they are, starting to talk about, parenting styles and, mental health of children and, just mental health in general, which all were never spoken about before. And I think this isn't just the Asian culture. It's, I've heard this also from the American culture as well, even just like in the 1950s, to imagine people openly speaking and conversating about mental health in a way that didn't have a taboo is kind of like even unimaginable, because for some weird reason, just the topic of mental health, people often think crazy people, and that's just what it was back in the day in 1950. So there has been a huge shift with this, but it's not enough. It's definitely not enough. But even within my own family, yeah, I mean, I am constantly pushing the subject, for better or worse, so hopefully for better. And, sometimes there's definitely pushback. There's definitely, like I sometimes like I don't know if I'm getting like fully through to my parents or my family members. But throughout the years, I think they've seen the example that I'm trying to set and just they probably notice like some shift also in society, and just me talking about my nonprofit and the passion that I have for it, and I'm constantly talking about these issues and things that I'm seeing and things I'm passionate about. So the response now is more like I feel like they're at least listening. They're at least like taking it into consideration. And I do believe it's probably shifted their perspective on quite a few things, whether they admit it or not. But it's a slow and ongoing process, because again, the taboo is very deep, and people are often not sure what to think of, like what they don't know, what they're not familiar with. But at least when I talk about it now, there is a respect in the listening process. It's not just an automatic shutdown. It's just not like, oh, let's change the subject. Like, this is a weird subject to talk
I
about,
love that. I love that how you bring up just noticing that, even though it's not been like a drastic major change, there's still something that has happened, compared to before. And having,
Yeah.
the responses of, them wanting to listen more, or talk a little bit more about it than rather than shutting it down and doing that. Cause I know that definitely I can relate to you on that, with my family as well. It was always, neck change the subject. Like, we're not going to get into this. We don't need to talk about this. And I would always sit there and try to think where that is coming from, whether it's kind of the vulnerability that goes along with opening up and feeling like in a way you're almost exposing yourself and here's what I'm dealing with, and not being comfortable with that. Or,
Right.
there's so many things. And that's the thing, is there's so many things that could make people feel uncomfortable with that subject, especially when
Uh-huh.
you're wanting to get into, your own struggles or someone else's struggles, and what was that like, and what did you learn from that. And it just depends. And I feel like, continuing to, at least see the work that you're doing and how passionate you truly are, because I can see it and I can
Hmm.
hear it in you, and just through our
Thank you.
conversation and just talking about all the things that you've done. And it's so evident that this is something that is so important to you, not only because it's impacted your life and having lost friends to suicide, but just seeing in general, how much of a taboo is still present, and
Hmm.
continuing to do the work that you're doing to really work to eliminate it, because that would be awesome, right? If we could just eliminate it for for
Hmm.
for all, just completely gone, and there was never just, no more taboo around this at all.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
because, and you also mentioned another really good point last time we were talking. You said mindset can seem like it is everything and like it is nothing. So I'd
You're
love for
right.
you to talk about this. So what do you think the relationship is between mindset and mental health? And if there is a relationship there, what does it look like?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's definitely a relationship between mindset and mental health because it's even in the word mental, right? Mental, mind, and mindset. So it definitely has a lot to do with it. But like I said, it can seem like everything, and yet it's not enough. So I also have a background not only in psychology but also in personal development and life coaching. So I also see it from that side. And in the world of life coaching, personal development, mindset really is everything. Like people talk about mindset all the time. And most things that you work on tend to be a mindset shift. That also happens to be the case for therapy. Actually, a lot of therapy works on your mindset and shifting your mindset, and it possibly takes a bit longer. And there's different ways of doing it, but it's also very apparent in therapy. However, the issue that I see, the reason why I say it's not enough, is because shifting your mindset is just a perspective shift. Yes, it can absolutely make or break, the next few years of changes of your life. It can absolutely help you to gain different perspectives and learn how to work with your own mind, your own psyche. But often we have those unconscious and subconscious, more deeply rooted issues and traumas and just things that we're told, or our belief systems, that we're not even aware of, that are deep rooted inside us, that a simple mindset shift cannot get rid of. It can't really tap into that. And how can you if you don't have the awareness for that? So that's when certain times I might tell a client, okay, I think therapy alongside with coaching would be beneficial for you, because if I notice that there's something deeper that needs to be worked on, and honestly, I feel like everyone should get therapy, right? Because we all have deep
Yes.
things
Yes.
that we need to work on, and if you don't think you have deep things to work on, you probably want to look at that. um
Yes.
but yeah, so in order to actually become aware, of like what do you really need to shift your mindset on? You might think, but there's so much else happening. There's like years and years and years of, forgotten about, bottled up, suppressed, like whatever experiences
I
that
love
you can
I
unravel.
love how you bring up trauma and unresolved trauma, because I actually saw a quote the other
Uh-huh.
day. It said unresolved trauma is the real gateway drug. And just having
Mm.
that, and because you can like, I love how you talk about mindset and the relationship to mental health, but also talking about how it's not enough. And what do you mean by that? Like having on, and I love how you explain that in the way of, if there is something deeper, right? There is trauma there that hasn't been dealt with or resolved. It's just still there, because I can definitely relate with my own stuff, and like noticing, what did that look like when I did not deal with it, I did not address it, and what did that do to
Right.
my quality of everyday living and my life through not doing that? Because at that time, during that time, I feel like I honestly could have done so much work on my mindset, personal development, but I don't think it really would have done a lot, because I still never dealt with the trauma, and just
Mm.
continuing to try to push it back, and just try to move on, just act like it didn't happen, and doing all these things. And that's why I love you bringing up that piece of, if you have a client who you're working with life coaching and personal development, but also talking about therapy, and saying, hey, I think this would be a good thing to explore as well, because the work we're doing is great and helpful and so beneficial, but there's also these other things that
Right.
you could do with therapy. And just also
Right.
bringing up that, how everybody should at least go once to
Yeah.
experience, even if you think like there's a taboo again still surrounding therapy somewhat. I feel like it's
Oh, there
definitely,
totally is.
yes,
Mhm.
I totally think there is as well. I think it's definitely gotten a little bit better, kind of from what I've seen, as people are more open to saying, oh, I've been to therapy, or I've had a therapist, and different things like that. But
Mhm.
just
As we're
trying,
breaking the taboo. Yeah.
yes, yes, and talking about those things. And
Right, right.
because it is again, something that isn't always the easiest thing to get into, because of course talking about mental health, but when you're talking about your own mental health, that could seem, you know, like almost
Mhm.
like unexplored territory for some people who haven't really, ever been to therapy, or maybe
Yeah.
haven't talked to anyone
Yeah.
about, their own experiences. And then they're all of a sudden in a conversation where someone's talking about their experiences and then asking them about theirs. And it's almost like, what do I do? What do I say? How do I act? And not really knowing how to respond. And I think that's why it's so important what you're doing, is just because that's what's stopping, I think, these conversations
Mm.
from moving forward, is that taboo of all of, and I think also it can kind of come from a narrative that we create in our own heads about our own experience, right? So we could sit there and say,
Yep.
if I tell people about this, then this will happen, then they won't like me, they'll judge me, I'll feel critical, like all these different things that we tell ourselves, this is what's going to happen if we
Absolutely.
talk
Yeah.
about it. And just breaking that and putting that out there and saying that that is common. It's common to
Mhm.
think
Mhm.
that, whatever it is, whether you had a struggle or some kind of experience, but putting that out there, it's normal to be afraid and to have a fear and to attach something to that. But putting it out there in a
Yeah.
way to where you don't have to have that. And it's just continuing to do the work to strip away that taboo from those experiences that
Mhm.
people have
Mhm.
had or are having.
Mhm.
And then that leads me to another great point that we had last time. I would love if you could share with me the accomplishments or milestones you are
Mhm.
most proud of since you started Breaking Taboo.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first, I'd actually like to add on to
Yeah, of
what
course, of
what we
course.
were just talking about with the mindset shift and mental health. Um, yeah, I mean, I think a lot of times, the reason why it's not enough also is there's resistance. Like when you try to shift your mindset, sometimes it's not so easy, and you try multiple different ways, or a client will try multiple different ways, and it's just not happening. There's some kind of resistance there, and it's usually subconscious or unconscious. And that's when there's something to look at. That's when okay, there needs to be deeper work. There's probably some trauma here. There's probably some type of repressed memory. So that's when therapy can also really help. um, And then the other thing I wanted to touch upon is also, there are certain diagnoses that do and may require medication or other methods that aren't just going to be fixed totally with the mindset shifts, and I don't necessarily want to use the word fix. Actually, that's not the right word, but be like resolved or dealt with in like the best possible manner, with just simple mindset shifts. So it's more like certain types of mental health conditions. I would also say if you paired it with therapy and or pills and or holistic, avenues, like whatever it is, it might need more. And you'll still want to work on your mindset shifts, so no matter
Yes.
what, mindset's
Yes.
important, but that's what I mean. Like, it's not the whole picture. Yeah.
Yes, I love that. I think that's so important that you just
Yeah.
brought that up of all the different avenues that people can explore, relating to like therapy, medications,
Mm-hmm.
holistic treatments. And that's honestly one of the things that I love the most about doing Crooked Illness is just having people come on like you and introducing me and people listening to different things that they might not have known that could potentially
Mm-hmm.
help them. So, I've heard all
Right.
kinds of different things,
Right.
that I even meditation, even that I
Right.
never used
Right.
to do that at all. I learned about that. And then, there's so many, depending on what you're trying to talk about, right? So if you're focusing on depression, anxiety, whatever it is, just that's really what I love is the fact that you lay that out there of, of course that's so important to do that mindset work and do that, but also
Yeah.
sometimes it's not, like you said, not enough just to do that. There you're gonna
Right.
have to, especially if you have things that are
Mm-hmm.
deeper and
Mm-hmm.
like you said, it feels like you can't move forward and you're like, why is that? Why do I feel blocked? And you bring up the point of something that's subconscious or like way deeper, like it inside of you that has happened that
Yeah.
you're not really able to access, and just learning more about that and what does
Or
that look like.
even in
Yeah.
life coaching too, though,
Yes.
even in that, you're not only just working on your mindset shift. Like,
Mhm.
where's that going to take you if you don't have the steps and the tools of what to do with it? I
Yes.
mean, you can say like, okay, great, I believe I'm going to accomplish this goal by the end of this year, by the end of 2021. But if that's all you're doing, it's kind of like the whole law of
Yes.
attraction thing too.
Oh, I
You can
totally
think it all
feel
you
it.
want,
I
right?
love
Yeah,
that. I
yeah.
love it.
So
Yes.
it's not everything. Yeah.
Oh
It'll
my goodness.
start you on the right path. Like, you definitely need it, and you need it to hold you through the whole way through, but yeah, you still got to implement, you still got to do the work.
Yes, of course. I love that. Amazing. So again, I wanted to ask you, so the biggest accomplishments or milestones. I would love to hear about that from you since you started and created Breaking Taboo.
Yeah. Well, I think one of our biggest accomplishments, or one of the things that I'm most proud of, is just how fast we've grown. I have definitely seen like a huge response in what we do, what we're about, and the amount of people that contact us. I don't even know how they find us sometimes, because we have a huge, social media following. Right now, we're up at almost 200K on Instagram alone, but then we have
That's
thousands of others
awesome.
on our other social media platforms, and we are growing by 3,000 per week. But and we're expected, I'm hoping, of course, like that we grow even more. But outside of that, sometimes like people who don't even follow us at all and don't know we're on social media, or they don't use social media, like they find us somehow. And I've done like absolutely zero SEO work, and somehow we're ranking on Google, and like people are finding it. So
That's
something's happening,
awesome.
something's working, like
Yes.
something's working, and people are starting to notice, and they're like really into it, and they're super, all the responses that we get are for the most part super super positive, and I think people just, they get it, they love what we do, and there's a huge need for it, so I would say that the rate of growth and just like the amount of people that we're able to touch on a daily manner is incredible. We also get a lot of just grateful responses. Sometimes like people say, like we've asked the question before, like why do you follow us? Like, well, and the response is because like there's people that have said, you are the one thing that I see, I have to go on your page every day and it's what lights up my day. Or you give me hope when I feel alone, or I learn mental health tips just by going to your page, or, you know, just like amazing things like that. And that makes me feel really good, because social media gets a really bad rep for
Yeah.
actually being damaging to people's mental health. And I've always wanted to use it for something good. And the way that we've structured, you know, our social media is like actually providing people with something that's going to be more beneficial to their mental health, that, you know, that they're actually going to walk away like learning more and gaining more tools, and making society a better place, you know, because we exist on social media. So
Yes.
so it's a
Oh, I
totally
love
different approach.
it. I think that's
um,
so, I love that how you talk about the growth and just the responses and just, some having people say, you are what I look to every day, and check your account, and just that makes me happy. That makes me smile. And just hearing, simple responses. And even if it sounds like that, you're like, oh, that seems like a little thing. That's huge. Huge, just to know that that's what someone looks to each day to help them, start their day
yeah,
on the right foot or whatever it is. And that's
yeah, it
definitely how
means a
I felt.
lot.
Yes. And that's definitely how I
Hmm.
felt. I feel like, because I remember, like, I was just sitting here right now scrolling back, and I'm like looking up the account. And I remember, getting a message from you guys and then checking out the account. And I'm like, this is amazing. This is, I love it. I was like, I love this. And you guys have a podcast as well. And just the documentary, the organization, the whole message behind what you're doing, like just working towards breaking the taboo surrounding mental health, these kinds of conversations, suicide prevention education, all of the stuff, and just, just everything in general. I was like, this is amazing. And that's really what I think the good side of social media is, right? Is finding things like this,
Hmm.
things that, bring you joy and make you feel good about just living and being alive, and finding something and saying, wow, look at what they're doing here. Look at the message behind this. And that's what gets me excited, because I can definitely agree with you. I see kind of both sides of, social media, the bad side of it and then the good side of it. But like,
Hmm.
I think what you're doing is totally 100% like hitting the nail on the head, is using it for a good way, or a good reason to kind of have this place here on social media to allow people to learn more about mental health in general in so many
Hmm.
different
Hmm.
ways. And I think
Yeah.
that's
Hmm.
so important, because sometimes, usually, I don't know what people think about when they first think of social media, but oftentimes you think of, scrolling and just endless scrolling, looking up different things, and not really, taking away too much value from whatever it is.
Yeah, I think what people do often on social media that I hear is the most detrimental is the inclination, and it's just human nature, you know, but it's the inclination to compare ourselves
Yes.
constantly to the
Yes.
perfect image lifestyle that people have, you know, which is
Yes.
ridiculous because no one's that perfect.
I saw a really good quote. Now that you bring that up, I saw someone posted a quote, and it was saying, don't compare your life to someone's 5-second reel, or like whatever it is, like like the post, and then the
Yes.
stories of seeing all this stuff, and then sitting there and saying, oh, like comparing your, your actual life to these things we see on the internet. And also, I also love those posts when people, create these posts, and they'll have a story and talk about, like, don't believe everything you see on the internet, because this is really what my situation was at this moment in my life when this photo was taken. And you can
Mm-hmm.
probably see a photo and look at it and say, wow, like, look at that person, they look so happy, they look
Mm-hmm.
amazing, they look like they're having the best time ever. And then they can have a story that's, I was actually very depressed during this time and contemplating suicide. And you're like,
Mm-hmm.
I had no idea, no idea by looking at this. And that's why I think, the work you're doing is so important, to bring awareness about suicide prevention education, because oftentimes we just don't know what's going on. And people, of
Right,
course, on
right.
social media, you have no idea. You see photos, and you don't know what's going on in that person's life, really, unless you know
Right.
them on a personal level. And still, even if
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know them, you still don't entirely always know every single thing and every single thought that's going through their head and
Yeah.
all of that. So I think it's,
Yeah, I
so
think
important.
I think people are very quick to judge. Like that's the new generation of like short attention spans, seeing these like pictures and just getting desensitized all the time, and then it's just like it trains our brain to be like, this is this, this is that. I judge this. This is my opinion on this, whatever. And it's just what our brains are going to do. But I see that's the other thing that I see on social media a lot is a lot of judging, so much judging from
Yes.
everyone. But at the same time, though, I'm being someone of, our slogan is kill, silence, save lives. I'm huge on communication. I'm huge on just, whatever you're thinking, whatever you're feeling, like, don't be afraid to say it. I mean, don't be like mean about it,
Yes.
or
Yeah.
bullying, but still, we all have a right to our own opinions and what we think. And so, in that sense, I also see the other side where I feel like, well, you know what? It's kind of good that people are like sharing their thoughts and like talking about, because sometimes I go on stuff and I like love reading comments, and I think and I love controversial comments too, because
Yes.
I can always see like multiple sides to different things. I'm not turned off by controversy. Like I wouldn't be able to be a mental health advocate if I was turned off
Yes.
by controversy, and sometimes I even like encourage that. but the thing is, like, I think that the good side of that is I'm like, wow, I am seeing so many different perspectives from people all over the world, and people think so differently from each other, and that's actually beautiful. That
Yes. I
actually
love that.
can be
Yes.
beautiful. So that's the way that I like to approach it. So yeah, I mean, people nowadays, like, there's such a huge cancel culture too. It's like, oh, you said this, cancel. And
Yes.
I'm like, you don't know anything about this person. You read one comment and you just judged everything. It's a very
That's how
black and
I
white
feel. That could be
way of
like a
thinking.
whole new episode. That's literally that's so there's so
Yeah.
much and just honestly like that can go into that and all of that. And I think that's amazing, that you are able to do that because I feel like so many like especially surrounding mental health, it's so easy to see, if we see something online or we see, one thing, we're like, all right, that's it. Done. Like but
Yeah.
again, that you bring up that point of you don't know what that person's thinking, feeling, or going through to make them react
Hmm.
how they're reacting or say what they're saying. And to really have an understanding of that and awareness of that, I think is so incredible because, that's something that can definitely be developed and you can definitely learn to have that. And I think it's everybody should, have that because then it'll be way, way easier to understand different struggles relating to mental health if we're able to
Hmm.
look at it more from that perspective. But one of the other things, actually, the last thing I really want to ask you is what
Yeah.
has been the greatest lesson you have learned so far in your work to break this taboo?
Wow. The greatest
Yes,
lesson.
gotta end it on this note.
Yeah, okay. So I will have to go back to what I just talked about with communication. Again, it's written right there in our name, in our slogan, Breaking Taboo, Kill Silence, Save Lives. Communication is everything. Like, I stand by the fact that, and my belief that most relationships and family dynamics and mental health issues, it can be, if not resolved, but at least come to a much better, healthier place with communication. I mean, that's half of therapy, right? It's like just
Yes.
communicating, getting things out there. So I really emphasize, one thing I've realized is the more people bottle things up, the worse it tends to get. And that includes, especially mental health issues, such as depression. So I really realized that communication is literally a lifesaver. Like, it literally saves lives.
Yes,
So
100%. I couldn't agree with you
right,
more on that.
right.
I think that's incredible, just highlighting that because that kind of goes back to everything we covered, everything we got into today, and just everything that you're working
Mhm.
towards is boils down to communication. And really, honestly, a lot of almost everything in life boils down to communication and how how we communicate, how we want to communicate, how we
Mhm.
used to communicate, and especially when we're talking about, mental health struggles and challenges and these kind of things like this, and really having that and being able to teach other people how to do that, because sometimes we feel like we're in a position of we don't know how to communicate, or we don't feel like we're
Hmm.
ready to, or we don't, or we're afraid to because of, how we think other people might react or look at us differently. There's so many things and so many barriers that we could dive into on that, but I think what you said is so true. It's just communication and learning
Yeah.
how to.
And that's a barrier to break. Like
Yes,
that's a taboo
yes.
in itself, because I think people don't really think of communication necessarily as like it can save lives. Like they don't, a
Hmm.
lot of people don't understand the importance of it. So again, a part of our mission too is to drive that message, is like, have open conversations about things, about everything, about your mental health, like, teaching people how to have these conversations about mental health, and about like what do you say to someone who is depressed, who you suspect might be wanting to end their lives. It's just like, do you not say anything? No, I mean, there are ways to go about it. So it's like teaching the tools of communication, but also the first and foremost is breaking those barriers and making people aware of the importance of it. um,
Yes.
yeah,
That
so
is that is everything right there. And that is so important. And I just wanted to say that I think this whole conversation today has just been so amazing and incredible, and just being able to hear the work that you're doing with Breaking Taboo, with the documentary, with the podcast, all of it, everything that you've done and are currently working on. And I just think it's amazing to me so much because, like your name, Breaking Taboo, you're working towards continuing to do that and to take that taboo away, strip it away. So, and just providing more education in these areas. And I just think
mm,
that's amazing. So I just want to say thank you to you, Serena, for making the time to chat with me
thank
here on
you.
Crooked Illness today and share a little bit about your story, your journey, and all the details so far.
Thank you so much. Yeah, it was a pleasure, Paris. Thank you so much for all of your very insightful questions. And I did want to add just one more thing to
Yes, of
what I learned.
course.
Yeah, I would just say that the second thing is persistence. It takes time.
Yes.
You can't change the world in one day or one year. It takes time, especially when it's a new concept and you're literally shifting society's mindset. You're going to get pushed back. People may not agree with everything, but you can't be afraid. I mean, if you believe in something, you have to fully
Yes.
believe it, and you have to be
Don't give up.
persistent. Yep.
Continue. Yes,
And know that the
continue
bigger
doing it.
picture, yeah, the bigger picture is all worth it. So even if one life is saved, it's all worth it.
Yes, you guys heard it here from her. And again, you guys, her name is Serena Sun. She is the founder of Breaking Taboo. You guys need to check her out on Instagram, Breaking Taboo. They are so awesome and post such awesome content. And this has been such an exciting conversation. I can't wait for you guys to check this one out. And if you guys are listening during the daytime or nighttime, I hope you have a great rest of your day or night. And I want to end it on this note and also say bye to you guys and bye to Serena. Bye.
Bye, Paris. Thank you so much. Bye.